Hi guys, we're going to have a little look at automation in this tutorial. So I've given you the Show Me Love basic arrangement, which is something I'm using with some of our second years for remixing, but it's a really good thing, really good way of showing you how we can start to use automation on any kind of audio tracks. What I'm showing you will also work on any kind of software instruments as well. But this gives you a kind of good understanding of what you can do with it and how you can make it work. So here we've got our vocal. That's an old 90s house track. And obviously as this track is selected, then down here on the left this channel strip relates to that. So anything that we add here, volumes that we change, panning, any kind of effects will affect this this region here. So let's start by putting an EQ on the channel. So we can double click here in the EQ box, double click, and I'll open up the EQ. And then as long as these blue switches are on, it means that we can use these different parts of the EQ. So this could be that we are bringing up some of the low frequencies or bringing them down, and all I'm doing here is clicking and dragging. We can do that on some of the kind of node stuff here in the middle, and we can use the Q to make that narrower or wider. And if we actually play that, you'll hear some of the differences that those EQs are making. Here it's taking out a lot of the middle frequencies. You can also have a look at the waveform as it's going by clicking the Analyzer button here.
Heartbreaks and promises.
So you can really start to manipulate the sound just using EQ. We'll come back to that in a moment. The other ways of getting into the automation, really good plugins that you can use are things like reverbs and delays. So let's open up a reverb in this second insert channel here. We'll go to reverbs. Let's have a look at Space Designer. And if we go to where it says default here, we can choose any of these. Let's go for something quite big so we can really notice the difference. So large, and you'll see here it's got 3.3 seconds. That's how long the reverb's going to last. So the bigger, so dome down here, that's going to last for 14 seconds. Let's have a look at something like Big Old Church. And as I've said before, dry is the original sound wave or the sound file, and then reverb is how much reverb you add to it. So if that's down at 0 or muted, you won't hear any reverb. If that's at max, you'll hear absolutely loads of it. So you can really hear the difference there. Okay, we'll close that one down. Now it's opened up a little third space for us, and here I want to put a tape delay. So click on it and we'll go to delay, tape delay, stereo. And this is that delay that emulates the pedal that we've seen a couple of times and I've talked about with the tape looping, and each time it loops it deteriorates the sound. And again we've got dry, which is the original level, and you've got wet, which is the level of the delay. But the one that we're really interested in is over here on the left, and that's the feedback. And you can push that to a certain place where it will feed and feed and feed and start to get into real kind of noisy, messy sounds. And that's something which is perfect for automating, because we can get it to a point where it starts to kind of feed back on itself, but then we can kind of edge it off so that it doesn't get any further and doesn't get any nastier. So perhaps we'll start with that one. So before we do anything, what I want to do is just to mute the EQ and the Space Designer. So what I do is I press the Alt key and I hold it down, and you can see that the cursor now changes to an on-off icon, and then click on your mouse. So what's happening is that the plugins are still there, but they're muted. Okay, so let's have a listen to what the delay is doing for the vocal right now. Okay, so we can hear that at 66% feedback, that's actually getting a little bit out of control. So I might want to start by bringing that back down a little bit. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. because we can start to draw in this information. So if you press on your keyboard the A key, that's brought up these kind of extra lines, so it pushes the file into the background and you start to get extra lines here. So the default is that it will give you the volume, and you can automate the volume. So it says volume here, and then if you click on this black line in any point, it turns yellow to say it's been activated, and then you can just click and make points within that line, and then you can drag those up and down. So this will be us automating the volume up and down, and they can be moved left or right if you want to make them closer or further away from others. And then what you'll notice is if you look down here on the left, this area above the fader now says read, which means it's reading that information, and you'll actually see the fader moving as you can follow the information there.
I'm tired of giving my love and getting nowhere.
So that's quite good. If you've made mistakes and you don't want to have, for instance, this peak here, click on the dot again and it'll go away. And again, if you click on all of them, then it's as if you haven't done anything. It kind of cancels out what they're doing. Obviously, you've got undo and redo functions if you make a mistake there as well. Okay, then where this gets really interesting is where you can have lots of different automations happening at once on the same channel. So this one is volume, but if we look here, this kind of arrow that's pointing towards the track, if you click on that, it goes down, and that gives you another set of automation that you're using on the same channel. So what you're seeing here is essentially a kind of copy of the image of what you've got above. Now they're both volume at the moment, so if we left them both as volume, whatever you did on one would copy on the other one, but we can actually choose anything, any parameter we want from any of the plugins as well. So we've got volume, we've got pan, which is your left and right, but then you've also got things to do with the main channel, so you can solo it or you could mute it, so you could write that into the information as well. You can bypass some of your insert effects, so you could bypass the EQ, you could bypass the reverb, you could bypass the tape delay, or you can go directly into all of these. So within the EQ, you've got, I don't know, 25, 30 different options there that you can start to manipulate, and all of these will relate to the different EQs we were looking at earlier, with kind of pushing frequencies up and down and making the cue more narrow, or kind of fattening the cue up. If you go to Space Designer, you can choose, there are frequencies on there that you can do with an EQ within it, or you can look at the dry output, or you can look at the reverb output. So we'll probably look at the reverb output one first. On tape delay, again, any of these kind of parameters within the actual within the insert effect itself, you can change. So you can change the tempo, you can change the distortion level. The dry is obviously the original sound, the wet is the tape delay. You can change the feedback, and this is the one we'll look at first. So if we click on feedback, we can see it's at 51%, and this correlates with our 51% that's down here as well. And now again, by clicking on it, it activates it, and then we can start to draw in lines. So it's usually about 58 to 61 that it starts to feed kind of beyond control, but then you can start to put other points in where you can bring it down just a few kind of points. Just going to zoom in there as well to make it easy to look at, and then that'll bring it back up to kind of under control again. So we can really manipulate this as much as we like just by kind of putting new points in and dragging them up and down. And you'll see the feedback changing here again as it's following the automation.
Heartbreaks and promises, I've had more than my
Okay, so you can see there that you can really start to manipulate these different points. When you start cutting up the audio, you'll be able to do this tape delay on certain sections and start to make some really interesting effects. Now this kind of down arrow thing that we did before to open up another part that we can manipulate, that just keeps going forever. forever. So you can have as many as you want per channel, and all of them can be set to different things. So if I wanted this one to be the reverb out for our Space Designer reverb, we could use that one. This one could be something to do with our EQs, where we could be changing frequencies on the EQ. So you can really go into this at a really deep level, as deep as you want. That's what I want you to start mucking about with today, and seeing how you can integrate it into your compositions.